Just want to take this time to say Happy New Year's and thank you all those that have been listening to my podcast. Thank you so much. Have a blessed day. And remember, this year is going to be a blessed year. 2023 is your year. You can be out of an abusive relationship. I know you can. And I'm praying and I'm believing with you. Have a great day. Thank you so much for listening. Hello and welcome. I want to talk about how to forgive the abuser, the man that abused you, how to forgive him, how to let go of the hate that you have for the man that abused you, how to go on with your life. Because if you don't forgive for what he did to you, you will always carry that baggage. You will always carry that frustration. You will always carry it. So you have to learn how to forgive him and what he did to you. This is also a process, a step, baby step that you have to do in order to heal on the inside. You have to forgive and let go and turn yourself around. It took me a long time to forgive this man for what he did. It took a long time for me to get up, build myself up, to be able to let it go, because I didn't understand. It was in the back of my mind all the time. How can you forgive somebody that hurt you so bad? How can you let go of that hurt, that anger, that bitterness, them thoughts? How can you let it go? Because there was days I thought about things that he did, and I would rehearse in my mind of the abuse that he did to me. I would rehearse in my mind what he made me do to him. I rehearse in my mind that I should have said no when I left the first time. I should have stayed gone. I kept asking myself, why did you keep going back? I kept asking myself, weren't you miserable? Did you feel miserable? Why did you keep going back? And that was something that took me a while to try to understand, to try to figure out what it was, what the reason was, and why. I thought that, I felt I was in love, and I felt that eventually he would change and it would get better. And I was seeking for happiness and seeking for understanding. And it was like he had control over my feelings, my thoughts, everything. He had control because he could say certain words, and that's how it usually is. He then manipulated you so that he could say certain things, act certain ways, and you return. I'm not here to, like I said, to belittle men, put men down, or anything like that. I'm here to help a young lady. I'm here to help somebody to reach that goal, to reach that place where they're not bitter anymore. They're not hating their self, blaming their self, hating this man. I want to reach out and let you know that it's possible. You have to regain that belief in yourself. You have to regain that trust in yourself. You have to gain that love for yourself in order to grow, to survive, to live. You got to forgive. No matter what individual may have done to you, you got to forgive, because the longer you hold on to the bitterness, the longer you hold on to what he did, the more that bitterness and anger and frustration grows. You have to let it go. You have to get to the point where you'll say, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be all right. I'm going to make it out of this. I'm going to succeed. I'm going to be able to help somebody else. I want to be able to help another young lady that may be going through what I'm going through. So I have to heal on the inside. I got to heal myself. I got to encourage myself. I have to build my self esteem up, because if you don't love yourself, you can't help no one else. If you're holding on to that bitterness, that hate, you can't help no one else, because you can't tell somebody to just let it go, forgive him, stop thinking about it, if you're constantly thinking about it and haven't forgiven. You can't say it'll be okay if you're still holding on to bitterness, anger, frustration. You can't be a help to somebody else until you get help yourself. And I knew I couldn't help no other single lady. I knew I couldn't, because I had to help myself and get myself out of the depression, out of the sadness, out of the anger. I had to get myself out of that before I could reach out to somebody else. I talk to other people. I talk to people. Don't think that I didn't talk. I talked to other people, but it was just like I was just talking, but I was just hearing myself. And then when I got through talking, and then I would leave, I would say, I would start feeling bad, because I would ask myself, why did I do that? Because it just seemed like I wasn't getting any answers, because I wasn't really releasing that frustration that I was carrying. I wasn't really releasing that anger. I wasn't really releasing and letting go. I would just give bits and pieces. But the part of the sexual abuse, I didn't want no one to know about. I let them know about the the words, how he would, beat me, kick me, slap me. But far as talking about the sexual abuse, that was the hardest thing for me to do. That was something that I was so ashamed of, that it happened, that I just could not see myself telling anybody about the sexual abuse that happened to me. I felt dirty. I felt embarrassed. I felt nasty. I felt that I shouldn't have let it happen. And if I tell somebody about what happened, they'll look at me like, why did you let that happen? Why did you allow that to happen? So I kept it. I kept burying it. Every time it would come up, I would bury it deeper and deeper. I would make sure I would talk about, the physical abuse when, he would beat me up, when he would slap me around, knock me down, kick me, stand on me, sit on me, try to suffocate me. But the sexual abuse, I couldn't get that out. I couldn't tell nobody. But I knew I had to. I had to talk about it. Sometimes that's when you can get a release, when you talk about what has happened. Talk about it. If you have to sit and talk to yourself about what happened to you, talk about it. Because the longer you hold on to it, the worse it gets. Talk about it. Explain what happened. Just say, I just need you to listen. You can't talk to everybody. You can't tell things that, because you have some people you talk to and they'll talk to somebody and say, well, did you? And that's what my biggest thing was. That was my biggest issue. Well, if I tell them what happened to me sexually, they're going to tell somebody else. They'll say, let me tell you what such and such told me about the sexual abuse and blah, blah, and this that she went on. And, oh, girl, let me tell you. That was my biggest fear. That if I told somebody about the sexual abuse, they would tell somebody else. And then I would look stupid when I would be around, because they would have that, girl, did that actually happen? Girl, what? That's what I thought. But when I talked about the physical, the mental, the verbal abuse, I didn't care who you told. Because, yeah, a lot of people get cussed out, told off, hit. And I didn't, that didn't bother me. But what really bothered me and what I had a struggle with was talking to somebody about the sexual abuse. But I knew I had to eventually talk to somebody, because I kept telling myself, you can't live this way. Like I said, I didn't allow my kids to know anything about what happened. So I was determined not to talk to my kids about this. And if I did have somebody over and we talked, they wouldn't be in the conversation, they wouldn't be around listening to what I was saying. I would go out, we, go to lunch and, go to lunch with a, young lady and talk. And then the woman that I was going around with, the pastor that I was going around with when she was taking me places, when she ministered, I just told her about the physical abuse. I didn't tell her about the sexual abuse because, like I said, I was too shameful. To me, I was just nervous, not sure, afraid. that I would be judged. Because, like I said, a lot of times when I was in a relationship and I would leave and go back, a revolving door, I would always hear that, girl, what is wrong with you? You know what's going to happen? Why do you keep going back? That just doesn't make any sense to me. So that's what I didn't want to hear. So I kept the sexual part of the abuse to myself until I could no longer keep it to myself. I had to talk about it. And I gave bits and pieces of what happened. Because when I tried to talk about it, I start crying, uncontrollable. I cried. But I knew that if I talked about bits and pieces of it, I felt a little ease within myself. I felt a little bit of strength. I didn't throw it all out there at one time. Little bits and pieces of it I talked about. And once I was able to get over that hump, the little bits, it got a little bit bigger. I explained more. I talked about more. I got to the point where I was able to tell what happened to me sexually. And once I start talking about that, I felt a release within myself. And I knew I had to continue to talk about it until I completely told the whole story. And I wanted to help other women that may have been through this. And I knew before I could help anybody, any woman that has been through a sexual abuse, I had to talk about it. So if it's little bits at a time, talk about it until you're able to talk about the whole thing. And you'll eventually start feeling better on that aspect. You'll eventually start feeling yourself relaxing, that you can explain, you can talk. And that's why, I'm doing this podcast, because I want to help single women that's been abused to know that you are somebody, no matter what happened to you, no matter how you were treated, no matter what names you were called. You are special. You are somebody. So, like I always say, I pray that I said something to get you started or get you to listen or get you coming back. I just want to be a help to somebody, some young ladies, single lady. So thank you once again for listening. And remember, you can be free. Have a blessed day and thank you.